Hi, can everyone hear me?
No correction, Joe. Oh my God.
Okay.
I can't believe the grief I just got. What's that? What'd you get?
Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I don't even know what day it is. I really appreciate it. It's a good group, and we have some great candidates. And I'm Laura Smits, past president of the League of Women Voters of Connecticut, past member of the Weston League, past registrar of voters, past Board of Education member. I've spent a lot of time in this town. I'm currently in Norwalk, but I'm really glad to be here this morning. A couple of housekeeping rules. We have 2 timers in the front. Raise your hands, ladies. And what they will be doing, we'll give the first question. We did a little quickie drawing of straws. Who's going to go first? Who's going to go second? The first person to get the question has a 2-minute time to answer, and the second person will get 1 minute. There will be no rebuttals, and then we'll reverse it. The second question will go to the second candidate, and vice versa. We're going to start with the first selectman first. And if you need a question, if you have a question, there are cards in the front. There are also cards in the back. Raise your hand and we'll get you a card. And our questions are being vetted by a person from the Democratic Party and a person from the Republican Party so that they are fair, accurate, and can be answered by either candidate. We ask for no personal attacks. Behave, everybody, please behave. And so we can get as many questions asked and answered as possible. Also, after the debates, we ask that as much as we want everybody to talk to the candidates and have time to talk with them, we ask for safety's sake, since we are in flu and COVID season, yay, great stuff, please take those conversations outside so everybody can be safe. Thank you, and let's begin. Okay, first question, and the first candidate to answer this question will be Mr. Grossener. And you ready?
I am.
Are we ready, timers? Okay, let's go. Should the town charter be revised? For example, is our town meeting form of government too antiquated? And should we eliminate the ATBM?
Interesting question. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the League for holding this again. This is a vital part of democracy in Weston, and thank you, Laura, for moderating. I would be opposed to amending the town charter for a number of reasons. I think there are things that I would love to adjust in the charter. I think it would be a good idea to reduce the number of commissioners on some of our boards. 7 has been extremely hard to fill in terms of recruitment. I read an interesting book very recently by Robert Putnam called Bowling Alone, and just noted that volunteerism in local governments, as well as in clubs and churches and social societies, is way down from the 70s, and we could probably adjust our committee numbers from 7 to 5 without too much danger, and probably find recruitment easier and more competitive. However, I would not be interested in eliminating the town meeting. I think it's a critical double check on the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance to ensure that the members of the town have an opportunity to object if those 2 commissions have done something that is not tenable. I'm sorry. So I would not eliminate the ATBM. And the town meeting is a critical part of our New England history, and again is a very, very important double check on the power of the Board of Selectmen. So I would want to keep both of those in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nestor.
So it's interesting that you asked this question, because the last chair of the charter revision, which is almost 10 years ago, came into my office and gave me a stack this tall of all the charter revisions and all the town charters going back to the 70s. He passed it to me. And I'm not going to make a fast and quick and hard fast rule that we won't revise the town charter, because my answer is that we need to investigate. It's been 10 years. Times have changed. I do agree with Stefan that we do need to amend the charter to be fewer members of these boards and commissions. But I also believe that we should keep our town meeting form of government, and we have to look at other items that are in the charter that are not as easily referenced right here. But there are some things that I believe we need to change.
Okay, thank you. Next question will go to Ms. Nestor. If elected, how will you I can't read this question. You effectively, what? Who is it? Effectively complete the town plan of conservation and development?
So, thank you for the question, and thank you, League of Women Voters, for having us here today. The Plan of Conservation and Development was completed when Steph and I were both on the Board of Selectmen in 2020. And there are a number of items in there that we have already started to move forward on. The sidewalks, the town green, and other amenities that we would like to implement. The village district, the biggest zoning change that we had in 50 years, that was effectuated in 2021. But the other items that are in that plan of conservation and development are really dependent on our ability to build our infrastructure up in order to do many of the things in town center that are in that town of conservation and development. I have been able to get $35 million worth of grants, many of them in the past 2 years, that have been able to fix our water and rebuild our roads and put in the sidewalks. What we want to do is to be able to see what sort of grant funding from the state, and I'm working with our state legislators right now to work on our septic and other infrastructure needs, and with our congressional delegation. So I will fund it, and I will keep moving forward.
Okay, Mr. Grossinger.
So I think there are many aspects of the POCD, including the village district, basically the development of the intersection very close to us here, and various other amenities that the town would like to put into place. The problem is that it is largely stalled out, and we're not making a lot of progress. My expertise as a commercial real estate attorney is to get transactions and projects like that done. Additionally, I put in 7 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission, where I was chairman when we did the 2010 Plan of Conservation and Development, which also called for development in the same section. So I think in order to complete it, we have to act like we want it. We have to make some first steps. To move the bus depot, we have to find a place in that plan for a senior center and get going on the actual infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Next question goes to you, Ms. Nestor.
It goes to me,
I think
actually.
it goes to him.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It's hard for me to chew gum and walk at the same time. Okay.
Quiet.
In the past year, Mr. Grossinger, in the past year, the town has lost 3 key employees, and there's been turmoil surrounding the Board of Ethics, Board of Selectmen meetings, with discussion shut down. What will you do to improve the situation at Town Hall?
Well, I think that we need to apply some good conflict resolution techniques. You know, again, let me step back into my expertise as a commercial real estate attorney. I deal with conflict resolution all the time. I find myself dealing with people who don't want to do what my client wants them to do, and vice versa quite frequently. I think the way to approach that is to not cram anybody down, not try to end the conversation, but to engage in consistent dialogue, avoiding trying to dominate the other side, and basically attempting to find the middle ground. You know, I do think that in a number of areas, key areas, we have engaged in litigation instead of dialogue, and that when litigation is started, we've ended dialogue. And I think that's a mistake and unnecessary. I understand that if you do not have a legal background, then when litigation starts against the town, it's very easy to simply stop talking and say, no, we can't talk because there's ongoing litigation. I think that's when we have to start talking. So that issue, I think, has been responsible largely for stalling out some very, very major amenities, major projects that should be going on in town. And I'm not sure that I would blame that on the loss of key employees, but it doesn't help either. So I think we do need to, and Karem and I frankly are running on, we're not running against Sam and Tony so much as running against a culture that's been entrenched for 12 years of a somewhat belligerent, combative government, when instead it should be committed to dialogue, finding the win-win, non-binary thinking. Thank you.
Ms.
Can
Nestor?
you ask the question again?
Sure. In the past year, the town has lost 3 key employees. There's been turmoil surrounding the Board of Ethics, Board of Selectmen meetings, with discussions shut down. How will you improve the situation in Town Hall?
So I'm going to address a little bit of the question about the culture of the Board of Selectmen, and how we have had a number of successes on the Board of Selectmen. As a Board of Selectmen, we were able to move through and allocate the ARPA funding. As a Board of Selectmen, we were able to complete the Town Green project. As a Board of Selectmen, we were able to bring people from the public and have public input and votes on things that honestly people never participated in before. I think it is a shame that everything that happened with the Board of Ethics. I do believe that my experience, 5 years experience serving the town, I've actually demonstrated that I've been able to work with other boards and commissions, and that we've been able to get a lot done and working with each other.
Okay, next question. We'll go to Ms. Nestor. What qualifications do you bring to the first selectman's role?
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I said that
Right.
strange way.
I thought there was something else in there. I think the most important thing that I bring to this role is I'm a very rooted person in our community. I have been doing this work for 6 years. It hasn't been 20, it hasn't been 30, but it has been 6. I cut my teeth on the Board of Education, and I've been on the Board of Selectmen ever since then. And I have seen the town go through a tremendous amount of changes, but most importantly, I've realized that going through the crisis of COVID and coming on board when the first selectman had to leave because of health reasons, and being able to move the town through PFAS remediation, the ending of COVID, and understanding that we need to bring people together. So what I bring to the table is actually somebody who's met thousands of people and knocked on thousands of doors and met voters where they are and know what their needs are. But I'm also a person who sends people information. It was virtually unheard of that there was a newsletter from Town Hall. We send out communications every single week to let people know what's going on and how they can participate and what they can do. So I think the most important thing that I bring to Town Hall is experience, planning. I'm a big planner. I was a project manager in my past life, so I'm all about completing projects. There have been 7 projects that we've just been poised to complete this summer, and they include $1.5 million for the roads, the town green, the sidewalks, a police records room, and so many more really important initiatives like the steep grants that we've been brought in. And I've been able to bring $35 million worth of grants because of my relationships with our state and federal delegations.
Mr. Grossinger.
So as I've already stated, I'm a commercial real estate attorney by trade, which means that I am constantly dealing with projects that need to get done. I'm hired by people on an hourly basis to perform just the sort of projects that are accomplished here in town. Additionally, I am familiar with the laws and the regulations that have become so important in the running of a town like Weston. I want to emphasize what Sam said. Town hall happenings was in fact brilliant, and give credit where credit is due. And Sam did in fact get on the phone and get the funding for the sidewalks when that was going to run out. There have been failings, however, over the course of the last 12 years. The makerspace, as we know, did not make it because of initial poor planning. The dog park, we've been waiting for a dog park for 7 years, also because of initial poor planning. And the pickleball courts are stalled out. We do have certain things that we need to do a little better.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Mr. Grossinger, this one goes to you first. Among other duties, the town administrator is someone the Board of Selectmen can look to for independent advice. Towns over the years have realized the benefit of having a professional manager, especially to oversee the town employees. In fact, Wilton has recently hired one. Do you plan on filling the position, or do you plan on eliminating that position and giving those duties to the first selectman?
I would absolutely not eliminate the position of town administrator. Town administrator is a crucial part of town staff and a crucial part of stability in town. You don't want to change out the person who is responsible for staff relations every 2 years. You want to have somebody who's been there for a long time, understands how the town works. We had an excellent town administrator in Jonathan Louise. He, in fact, was the one who brought the idea of sidewalks, I think, to the town and did the initial heavy lifting on grant writing and things like that. It was a tremendous loss to lose him, but we cannot afford to have the town administrator job be a political position that changes over potentially every 2 years. We absolutely need to have that stability. So I know that the town administrator job has been essentially vacant, or at least there's been a temporary town administrator for several months. One of my priorities would be to start the hiring process to make sure that we have an excellent town administrator, somebody who's willing and able to do the job and to do it for a very, very long time in Weston. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Esser?
I agree with everything Stefan said. We absolutely do not, we are a special town meeting form of government, and we have a town administrator to keep the continuity of the town. One of the things we did do as our board did do is the facilities work was delegated to the DPW. Because that is much more in line with the work. But I agree that we should find and hire an excellent town administrator. And that person's main job is the head of HR. They are the leader of all the employees. In our town charter, it says manage all the employees. So that person needs to have a clear understanding of unions, given that 90% of our employees are union employees. And it is an essential role in our town government.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to mix it up a little bit and switch over to include Board of Selectmen candidates. So, who wants to go first and second? Should we get on that, or are we just going to be, because there's only 2 guys, so it's hard to, should we do a drawing? Okay. I will give it to the challenger. How's that? To the
All right.
party that is challenging. How does that sound?
Sounds
That fair?
good, yeah.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. DeLange, are you ready? Yep. Okay. What is the biggest financial challenge facing Weston, and how would you address it?
I think right now we're at a crossroads, having almost getting out of a debt service that we've been in for about 20 years, financing the intermediate school and other projects with a very large bond. I think the biggest financial issue in front of us is, do we repeat that, or do we even go bigger than that, or do we take a more measured approach for the ultimate goal, of course, of making sure our schools get what they need, which they absolutely do, and investing in the education of the kids. That said, investing in the education of the kids is a broad concept. We all support it. How do we actually want to do that? When you look at the options before us, the least costly one itself is almost $80 million. That's at least the one that's been sort of vetted and discussed. And if we were to take that on, which might be the best decision, but it's going to be up to the taxpayer in the end if they think that the value of that $80 million or at least $80 million project is something that they can stomach. It would result probably in about an 18% increase in their taxes. What are the details of a project that big? Are we looking at, let's say, prioritizing the middle school and making sure that that's going to be up to snuff? And are we focusing on that, or are we tucking in other projects and other initiatives that maybe not every taxpayer thinks is as required? I think we have to focus on the priorities, take it step by step. I certainly think the middle school is a priority, and make sure we make financial decisions that are in sort of biteable chunks that we can all afford and stomach, and make them incredibly transparent. And I think when the town goes to vote on a budget matter like this, it needs to be incredibly clear. What are they actually voting for? What are the components of that proposal and the budget? What are the alternatives as well? And so that nobody feels like they're just voting no, which nobody really wants or likes to do. So I think that's really the biggest financial issue facing the town right now.
Thank you. Mr. Pesco?
Again, want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event today. When we look at the issues, I think there's two issues. One are the short-term tactical issues of how do we actually create a budget every year. The town budget is 20-some-odd% of the overall budget, and so working with $15 million to provide all of the town services is a year-to-year challenge that we face, and it's not getting any easier. Then there's the long-term strategic work that Karen mentioned, which is our town and school facilities. Those need work. That's a big ticket item. That's going to require a lot of work, a lot of very detailed work to determine ultimately the configuration of our town and school facilities. That work is not going to get done in any single year, but I think during our administration, we at least need to plant the seeds and have a vision for how our town and school facilities are going to evolve over time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vasco, this question will go to you. The preamble of the town charter states, all the town meeting and the selectmen together are the legislative body of the town. Phase 3 of the sidewalk plan was firmly put in place without a town meeting discussion, just a finance committee vote. Phase 3 involves cutting down 75 trees and makes the homeowner liable for maintenance and injury liability. Questions from residents have been repeatedly ignored and remain unanswered. Is this good governance, and could you do differently?
I am really sorry that I'm going to ask you to repeat that.
I knew you were. Okay, it's a good thing this person had really good handwriting, that's what I can say. The preamble of the town charter states, the town meeting and the selectmen together are the legislative body of the town. Phase 3 of the sidewalk plan was firmly put in place without a town meeting discussion, just a finance committee vote. Phase 3 involves cutting down 75 trees and makes the homeowner liable for maintenance and injury liability. Is this good governance, and could you do differently?
Well, I'm assuming, the details that you mentioned there, I'm assuming that they're true. Some of them may be true, some of them may not be true. But I think that that's really not the heart of the question. The heart of the question is more about process, right? And I think that there needs to be a huge amount of education in public town meetings. People need to understand exactly what the consequences are of any projects that's going to be put in place before it's actually voted on. I think that there are easy projects which basically may take a meeting or two to actually make sure everyone's on the same page and aware, and some may take months to actually get to it. Every homeowner ultimately has a right to appeal, has a right to ask questions about any decisions that get made. So, my view is good government is about making sure that you allow as much time as possible for everyone to really understand the implications of what any project that's going to get done before it goes to a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
So I'll be quite simple. No, I don't think it's an example of great governance if there's that kind of an impact concerning neighbors and citizens that were not consulted with or brought into the equation, especially in a town meeting type of government. I'll also answer that question by answering one of your earlier questions around the town charter. I think the reason for the ambiguity is because the town charter itself could use some clarification around what decisions, what matters, and what scope of work require an approval by what level of body, what board, and so forth. And I think there's some definite opportunity for clarification in the town charter around that so that we don't have questions like that. I don't think it's with bad intent that the sidewalks, let's say phase 3 is going ahead, as it is in that sense. I think it's just, neglect in terms of thinking or moving ahead quickly, which is, something we also always want to do. So I think we need to clarify exactly what kind of scope and approval each board has. But in this case, certainly voice of the neighbors is something that would have been important to have.
Okay, thank you. Next question concerns,
Laura, can the first selectman candidates answer that as well?
Yeah, I would like to say something quickly about that. 'Cause
okay.
I actually was
All right,
there.
we're gonna-
I actually am the only person here who was there.
All right, I will allow it.
I don't.
1 minute, how's that? 1 minute good?
They took away my mic.
Oh, sorry.
Come share.
Let's not fight over the mic.
Ooh, yikes. So first of all, I want to make very, very clear that the phase 3 of the sidewalks are part of our plan of conservation and development. This is a project that was actually brought before Stefan and I when we were on the Board of Selectmen. I want to say that the engineering firm, we are in the preliminary design phase of this project. What was presented at a public information meeting in August to all residents is not necessarily what we will end up with at the end. But I will say this was approved as part of the design was approved in the budget process last year. There was a town vote in the budget process. The POCD had public information meetings. We have not even gone through the permitting process or the process for PNC or conservation. So, and our engineering firm actually has a specific person who is our community liaison. And as those items were in there were weekly updates in the town hall happening. So I do want to say we were communicating and we are in the very early stages of this process. Could it be more clear? I always think we can communicate better.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grossinger?
Yes, I'd like to answer this in a very general way, frankly. I have noticed in my 19 years in town government that we do not allow much public comment. It is very curated in almost every instance. If you go to a Board of Selectmen meeting, rarely do the selectmen say, does anybody in the audience wish to speak? Very often they're simply told, no, this is not a public hearing. This is just a public meeting, which means you get to sit there and not answer. Every time I've gone to the Board of Education, same thing. The Board of Ed comes out, sits at the table, says, okay, does anybody want to say something? But they don't have the opportunity to react to what's been said or anything like that. So what I would like to do, if Karem and I are elected, is to have a opportunity at each meeting for the public to react to what's being said so that we can have real dialogue in town and in town government before we're faced with litigation, before we're faced with people upset with what's happening in their neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, this question is about the dog park. We're going to go back to the questions that I have in my hand, and everybody gets to weigh in on that one. Okay, the dog park. Mr. DeLynch, this is actually for you first. Do you support the dog park in the proposed location as it currently stands?
Such a simple question with
I
such
know, it
weight.
is. It actually says yes or no on there. I love this.
Yes. I do, as a dog owner and as someone who, noticed that there have been dogs who have been born and have died in the time that we've been discussing this dog park, honestly, in the town. I think the space is generous, it's forested. I think we have to be careful with how we implement access to it. I think, at this point, it's easy to sort of throw the towel and continue the sort of, the clash with the neighbors and just sort of plow ahead. I would love to plow ahead, but we can't plow ahead. I think we have to continue the dialogue with the neighbors and say, listen, ultimately, this is something the town has decided for twice. It's going to happen. How can we make it happen that's going to not intrude in your space or disturb or anything? I think ultimately the town has already voted on this, more or less. So with that decisiveness and focus, I think we need to continue to engage with them, making sure that, again, their concerns are met. I think budgetarily, I think we also need to review that too to make sure that we're not approaching it with, again, the most expensive option is like the obvious one. I think we need to sort of start from the bottom. What can we afford? What's something that we'd be willing to pay for? What's something that in conjunction with what the neighbors want is something that we can actually implement quickly?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pesco, dog park.
Pass this back.
What happened to our microphone?
I don't know what happened to the mic, but here we are. See, we're already collaborating.
Well, it was voted and approved on, and so our job as selectmen is to really execute what was voted on. Obviously, neighbors and town peoples have recourse, right? Everyone is entitled to legal recourse. Everyone is entitled to express their opinion. I think as selectmen, we have a responsibility to make sure that the things that can be handled outside of the legal arena, that we work with the neighbors to do that. But ultimately, we have to basically wait until all the legal avenues are gone through. And ultimately, after that, a decision will be.
We have prevailed in the second appeal of the revised dog park. And I will say that the path for the neighbors is they are appealing that right now, and we are waiting to see if that will be heard. My hope is that we will be able to build it. And I just want to clarify something. We did the planting program that Dr. Fela designed and created and developed with the beautification committee was done from the first conversations and initial conversations with the neighbors. So the planting plan that we have was based on that. And I want to be clear also that it is not just the neighbors who have had a hard time with the dog park, but I do believe we're a special town meeting form of government, and this was voted on in special town meeting.
Okay, Mr. Grossinger.
So I'm going to respectfully disagree with my three colleagues up here, and it's going to be almost impossible to do so reasonably in 1 minute. But what I have heard over and over again about this process is that the town has voted and the neighbors have recourse to litigation. I'm not sure that's how we should be making decisions. Back in May of 2017, the Planning and Zoning Commission gave this project a negative review and said that the place for the dog park should be reviewed and it should go to a town meeting. We skipped entirely over the process of looking for an alternative site, one that might not be in leaf litter, which I think might be a disaster for a dog park. And we moved right to the town meeting. Now, you may say, Stefan, that's democracy. We voted, we're done. The problem with that is that when you bring something to a town vote, when it has not been fully vetted yet, you're down to a yes or a no. You don't have the option of saying yes to a dog park, no to this location, let's find another place for it where it will be not only a more pleasant place to have a dog park, but won't interfere with neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, and the next question, we're going to start with Mr. DeLench, and then Mr. Pesco, and then we'll let Ms. Nestor and Mr. Grossinger weigh in on this one. I believe local government should be separated from national party rhetoric and should be about selecting the best representative for local needs, independent of party affiliation. How do you differentiate your platform policies from your opposing candidate, and how would you bring the community together to move forward?
Great question. And it's another aspect actually of the town charter that I would look at more closely, which actually makes no accommodation for unaffiliated citizens. And without that, I mean, to my knowledge at least, or my interpretation, without that, they're not able to participate in the government. And at this point, 39% of our voter base is unaffiliated. They don't even know that they can vote, by the way. I was just talking to someone door to door who was like, I would vote for you, but I can't vote. Please vote if you're unaffiliated. But I think there is definitely a distinction and a place for distinction between national rhetoric, national politics, and local government. Republican, Democrat, honestly, we're talking about a dog park. I don't think it's, there's not necessarily an association. I think the basic philosophical ideas might still be here. Conservative spending or, thoughtful, disciplined, rooted sort of budgeting. Those are kind of basic principles that, as a Republican, I think probably do apply to local government. But no, by and large, I would support Certainly better inclusion of unaffiliated voters or party, voters who don't identify with the party. And I think not only is that a big part of a town charter revision opportunity, but also a big D&I initiative. I mean, I think we talk about D&I, and I think we all think we know what that looks like, but what it's not actually doing today is incorporating a huge swath of people, almost half of the town, into our government process. And I think that that's the kind of inclusion that's going to be the most meaningful and most important in our sort of small town political process.
Thank you. Mr. Pesco.
Yeah,
Hold on.
Wait, we gotta move that mic. Are we down to one working mic? Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that small-town politics and municipal government, municipal service is not about party politics. I think that when we go knocking on doors, it's very clear, the mission of municipal leaders is to keep people safe and to make life better for them and their families. And I think that people speak about infrastructure, they speak about safety, they speak about community amenities. They speak about our human resources in our town, and do we have the right people to make sure that we provide excellent services. I think this is so far from anything that has to do with national politics. This is really about making people's lives better in this town, and it's not it's not about Republicans and Democrats. But you definitely get that feeling when you go knocking on doors and you listen to people and what they have to say.
Okay, Mr. Grossinger, well, let's try to do Republican, then Democrat. So let's do Mr. Grossinger and then Ms. Nestor.
Go back and forth, okay.
Thank you. So I wholeheartedly agree that national politics has very, very little to do with local politics. And, I have, in addition to being the first selectman candidate from the Republican Party, I'm also the chairman of the Republican Party. And we have just thought very long and hard about our mission and vision statements. And, the question you might ask is, are we just an affiliate of the national party? And the answer is absolutely not. Are we duty bound to reflect the strongest, most aggressive form of ideology? The answer is absolutely not. Do we have to represent the angriest sounding person in the room? No. I think what we decided is that as a local party, what we need to do is have the most thoughtful candidates and the most thoughtful positions on issues of local concern and ensure that we are doing the very best for Weston in terms of how we lead and the tone that we set. Thank you.
Really, I have to follow that? That was very well said, Stephen. Tony and I, we firmly believe that in local government, it really is about how are you connecting with your community? How are you keeping them safe? How are you making their lives better? When you're driving on the road, nobody cares if you're a Republican, Democrat, or if you're unaffiliated. A pothole is a pothole. And when you're sending your kids off to school and you want to make sure they're safe, nobody cares if the teacher's a Democrat or a Republican or who your child's best friend's parents are. I think that we have to be mindful on both sides, not to be divisive and not to channel grievance. And I firmly believe the main goal that we should have together, whatever makeup of that you see of the three of us, that we set an example and that we show our community that we are about making their lives better. And the only way we can do that is by working together.
Okay, Mr. Pesco, we're going to go back to this order again. What is your position on the Facilities Optimization Committee recommendations and the Town Plan of Development generally?
The Facilities Optimization Commission is really I would call it the back end of a work that really went back to 2017 when I was on the Board of Ed. At that point, there was a facility study that was done that basically said we need $38 million to actually of work on our school facilities to actually bring them up to what they thought was good repair. That's in 2017 dollars. Today, it's it's probably 50% higher than that. The facilities optimization, and as the board chair, I never thought that the answer to what ultimately would be our town and school facilities would come from the Board of Ed. That would need to come from a committee that had a bunch of different constituents from different parties, from different boards, from the community, as well as hiring experts. And the Facilities Optimization Committee came out with, 5 options. And I think that as a committee, it was well represented, and it was very thoughtful. And I think that there are 5 options there. One of them was sent back to the Board of Ed to opine on, and they're doing their work. I think it's early days. I think that I guarantee that there will be other options, and that there will be a different set of configurations. But ultimately, I think the most important thing that came out of the Facilities Optimization Committee was the agreement amongst a broad set of town officials as well as community officials that work absolutely needed to be done on our school and town facilities. Now, the configuration, I think we're far off from deciding exactly what that will be, and I think that's going to involve a lot of people and a lot of experts. But I do think that the most important thing that came out of that was a broad realization that we can't kick the can down the road again, that something needs to be done. It won't be done in a year, but we certainly need a long-term plan for updating our school and town facilities.
Thank you. Mr. Delench.
Was the question both the FOC and the POC? Or just the FOC? I'm happy to focus on the FOC. It was both, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Lots of questions here.
I guess I'll start with the FOC, since that's where Tony left off. I don't agree with, well, I think that the committee itself did a great job in thoroughly vetting the options and engaging with various consultants over many years, over many studies. So I think the thoroughness of the job was impeccable. I think the final recommendation that went through itself, I don't agree with, and also even the way the committee went about deciding how that goes through is kind of questionable. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. From my sort of observation of reviewing, the base case, the most simple, affordable option was packed with other things, like repurposing Horrelbutt, tucking in another grade or two in WIS. It was very ambitious for something that was just the most basic option. And again, the most basic option being $80 or so million to me seems hard to swallow. So no, I don't agree with the FOC, and it's a shame. Why are we so far off still? It's been years, and we're still far off. We still have a lot of opinions or options to consider. We shouldn't be there. We have to be, unfortunately, but I think it's time to actually review the options a little bit more carefully, decisively, and just finally make a recommendation that the town can actually swallow financially and also for the betterment of the schools and the students. And I also agree with the POCD.
Thank you.
Can I
Okay.
speak quickly?
Go ahead.
A minute?
Yep, go ahead.
I want to say, when we presented the Facilities Optimization Committee findings or their recommendation, we said that was the end of the beginning. This was sent over to the Board of Ed, and they created the Educational Optimization Committee, which is a bipartisan committee. And I almost died when somebody in the committee, I think it was the chair, said we need to do another study. And I was like, oh, not another study. What we need to do is actually look at our town and our school facilities. We have an annex filled with school and town employees that is past its useful life, that we have to find a place for them to work. We have a senior center busting out of its seams. We have to look at that and see how we can expand our senior center. One of the things that people look at this study at, and they only think of it as the school, I think it's really important that you understand that we have to look at this revamping or this potential bonding very holistically. We have to look at see what's best for our students, and we will take the lead from the Board of Ed. And we also have to see how we are going to accommodate our seniors and how we are going to accommodate our employees, because it's not just a one-size-fits-all. And I think we have to be really cognizant of that it's not just a renovation. We have to think creatively, and we have to start moving on this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grosinger?
So the Facilities Optimization Committee came up with a recommendation which was called Prime plus 2, 2 Prime, which meant essentially abandoning the elementary school, converting it to town offices, and building a new middle school entirely, building as new a middle school, to the tune of about $84 million before this inflationary pressure kicked in. That would be a bankrupting burden on the town if we bonded it. So unfortunately, I think the FOC then dissolved and sent it to the Board of Education. Now, that passed by a 5-4 vote, mostly Democrats voting for it, mostly Republicans voting against it. That was not the time to dissolve. That committee should have kept going until it came up with a solution that everybody could accept and move forward on, but it didn't. It sent it off to the Board of Education. My fear is that the Board of Education will come up with a 4-3 vote, and then it will go to a public hearing, a public vote. And then we'll have the same situation that we have with the dog park, which is yes or no. Nothing in between, no other options, and if you don't say yes, you're going to be a NIMBY and a town of no. I think we have to keep going on the dialogue, but for God's sakes, avoid analysis paralysis. Let's get going. And I think the Board of Selectmen has to take a leadership role in that and stop sending it off to committees and consultants. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pesco. First question will go to you this time. Is Weston government sufficiently transparent in its decision-making and actively seeking community feedback? And what is your view of open comment at Board of Selectmen meetings?
I think my experience on the Board of Ed and as chair of Board of Ed, I think informs this. And you know, it's always tricky. You can always do better. And I think that there's always been that pressure of, you know, not being isolated from the, you know, from what the public is thinking at any given moment. And I think we always tried to figure out ways of having public comment. And the issue, and we did have public comment, but we didn't have public discussion. And everyone always wanted public discussion. And the issue with the Board of Ed was that no one person speaks to the board. So who's going to answer the question, right? Who's going to have that discussion, right? I may not agree with my board member. He may answer the question in a way that 5 other board members disagree with. Now, are we going to debate within ourselves while we're actually sitting there in the public and having? So it was very, very tricky to figure that out. And so we did have public comment. I think public comment is good. Public comment seems awkward and not really enough because someone standing there asking a question wants an answer, right? And we should try to figure out forums where we do have that dialogue. And I'm all for it, but it's very, very tricky when no one member sitting up here speaks for the rest of the board. Our power comes from our combined decision making. And so, yes, in theory, I'm for it. We have to figure out how to do it in a way that is productive and doesn't actually create kind of these cross discussions amongst board members who may or may not agree with the answer to a question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeLynch.
Yeah.
So is Weston government transparent? I think technically, yes. There's a lot out there. It's in public for public consumption. The website, everything is there. But for a role of government where the townspeople are essentially a legislative body that can vote, and we want to keep it that way, that then forces the town to make sure that we have sort of structure in place to make sure they're informed and educated, and not just pushed information to. I think, you know, Sam, I agree, did a great job with town hall happenings. I think there is more stuff out there, but even as a Board of Selectmen candidate, burrowing through the website and looking through different meeting minutes and other proposals. It's hard to just sort of distill, as an average citizen, what do I need to sort of understand about this issue? What is even being discussed right now? And if I were to be asked, as a pretend sort of congressman of the town, to vote on something, am I educated enough to vote on that? I don't know that most people would be. And I think we end up having a super involved, engaged focus group of people from all camps and walks of life who are always there and who are always commenting publicly. And that's great, but it needs to be more representative of everyone. And I don't think, one of the things that culturally in the town, people broadly need to be more involved and they need to be more engaged and we have to just look at how we communicate beyond social media and just the website full of minutes. How do we really reach out to every citizen and make sure that they understand the issues at hand? I don't know the answer, but I know that we're not there today.
Okay, thank you.
Are we not, are we answering? No, we don't have to. Do you want
I'd
to?
like to answer that.
I don't know if you guys should weigh in on this one.
Okay.
We've got other
this
questions.
is
Let's let the selectman
I think
candidates.
this is actually a very important question. and I
It is
would
very,
like to
okay,
answer it.
all right, I'll let it
May
go.
I?
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
All right, you get to
1 minute,
rebuttal.
guys.
Fair enough, fair
You
enough.
get to be rebuttal
We've
against.
got lots of good juicy
Give me the
questions.
talking stick, please.
All right.
There, good.
Let's keep it short.
I once worked with somebody, and what he always said to me, and you guys know him, Chris Balding, and what he always said to me is, I always want to know from people how I'm doing. I want to know what they're thinking, what's important to them. And one of the key things that I believed in coming into this role was giving people an opportunity to engage. And how you can give people an opportunity to engage is you can educate them. I think we can do better. I think we have to, we have a whole swath of people. We have 30% new people who've moved to town who don't, and Tony and I learned this at the doors, they don't even know what a selectman is. And basically, and don't understand our form of government. So I think part of being transparent is being more inclusive and inviting more people, like Karam says, to the party and saying, you're wanted here, you belong here, and we care about what you say. And not have, and yes, it's important that we hear from the same people, but actually getting a broader group of voices coming forward.
So I spoke earlier about open comment, so I won't go over that again. Transparency, I think, is a crucial issue in town right now. I think in many ways, Western government has lost the trust of the public. When I joined the Planning and Zoning Commission, or when I became chairman of Planning and Zoning Commission, we had a roughly similar problem. And my answer was to create a cron file where every communication that I made as chairman to anybody and any permit that the office issued was put in a cron file that was accessible to the public. When I first did that, I came into the office and the admin, God bless her, had put the cron file under the counter, so you still didn't know that it was there, and you had to ask for it. I said, no, that's not what I want. I want it up on the shelf so that you can take it down and look at it without asking permission. That's, I think, what we need now. We're playing a cat and mouse game with information with members of the public. What we need to do is create a database of emails that are freely accessible to the public and even searchable to the public if there isn't some sort of requirement otherwise. And I've noticed that on many emails that I receive from town, there is a confidentiality warning at the bottom saying that this email is confidential. That's exactly wrong. It's a public document. What should be at the bottom of every email that comes from government is a warning. This is a public document. Whatever you say is going to be publicly available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. DeLench, this first question will go to you. If you're elected, how are you going to balance the interest of new residents with the interest of long-time residents of Weston?
As a new resident, I got that part covered, maybe. But I think, what we're all sort of saying and acknowledging is the form of government that we have needs to be inclusive of, and we're all, supportive, I think, of the public comment, and I think that's an important part of our government structure. I think the dialogue and, again, if we're bringing in more people into the conversation in a structured way, in a productive way that's not chatter on social media, I think that natural inclusion of, older generation, newer generation, this side, right or left side. I think that's naturally going to come to the forefront if we're able to have a more engaged citizen base that's actually able to feel confident about coming forward, coming to town hall, feeling productive about it as well, that they're not just sort of sitting there and being talked to, but they're actually being asked, to Stefan's point, we're now opening for public comment. So if elected, I think I would continue in that spirit of, dialogue both on a scale that's public in town hall, but also on a much smaller level. I mean, I love talking to people, and I love going and just meeting everyone in this great town and just making sure, I always start every conversation as if I just don't know anything, and sometimes that's often true, but I think it's important to have no agenda. I have no ego. I just sort of go in and I truly want to know what's important. That's always my first question as I go door to door, as I'm with people at various events. What's important to you? I don't start this conversation with what's important to me and here's what you should know, but just what's important to you and just taking it all in.
Thank you. Mr. Pesco?
I think that.
Hold on. 1 minute. They're moving slow.
I think just the part of running a functioning government means that you have to actually take care of all of your citizens, young and old. I mean, that's what government does, right? And so, in Weston, we always kind of say, like the heart of Weston is our K-12 schools, but that's only one part of it. I think that we take care of all of our citizens through our programs for our young learners, our lifetime learners, through the library, through the senior center, through Parks and Rec, through our social services. And I think that's really the important part of running government, is to make sure that your government services are there for both the new residents as well as the longtime residents, and is done in a cost-effective manner, so that it's not become a huge burden, especially on some of the longtime residents. But I'm all about making sure that you can run government at scale where you can actually run these services so that you're really you're really taking care of all of our citizens, and so I don't think it's about younger citizens and longtime residents. I think it's about our broad set of services to make sure that we provide them at scale for all of our residents, regardless of what their age or what their journey in life is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on. I don't think you guys need to weigh in on every question. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mr. Pesco, let's start with you. Without a formal newspaper in town, how will you communicate with the people in town, and have you done that in the past?
I think that Sam has done a great job in the town hall happenings. I think that I do think that we have to create public meeting agendas that really deal with, our public meetings many times are special agendas, but I think we have to have a cadence of regular agendas that heat certain topics at certain times of the year, that basically people can come and understand what's going on with the library, or what's going on with our capital expenditures, or what is the latest on the slate in terms of things that people need to be aware of where there's an upcoming vote. I think at the Board of Ed, what we did is we had a regular cadence of topics, so that you knew that in September this topic would always come up, in October this topic would come up, and I think that it's important to have a regular cadence of topics so that people are aware that certain times of the year in the Board of Selectmen meetings, these things will be discussed, so that they're prepared and can put it on their schedule to come and hear.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pesco, this question will go to you first.
Oh, no.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Lawrence. I'm not paying attention. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing a lot of talking.
We are. Okay. Well, I thought you might want to.
No.
Okay,
I'll-
so I will, so Mr.
Knows us.
Gross, yeah.
No, I will get this.
Yeah, I know. Okay, we're going to make sure that each candidate will answer all the questions from now on, going forward. Okay, so,
I think first, the question itself is almost a little dangerous because the lack of a newspaper, as an elected government official, I wouldn't rely on a private newspaper to be my form of communication. I think, of course, it should communicate things that are going on, but it's not my vehicle, and I think the role of media in government, you got to be careful there. But I think instead, what you want to, what we need to have in place is more public release statements, as larger governments would do, and PR, using your traditional sort of PR. I used to be in PR long ago, in communications, so we don't really have that kind of formality. We sort of post things on Facebook and we put it on the site, and we kind of leave it at that. But I think releases that are structured for media and news consumption, I think, is important. But I also think, and Stefan touched on it a little bit, and I wholeheartedly agree, and we made some progress here a little bit, but we do need a more structured system where we have everyone's emails and phone numbers, and we're able to actually communicate with everyone in a setting that's not just an emergency, and that we're able to really be selective, but communicative with the various initiatives and the things that are going on, things that the public needs to know about, things that they're about to vote on. A budget vote typically is like a 5% voter turnout. That's pitiful. Again, in an environment where everyone's a town legislative body. So I think we need to sort of use that as a KPI, get that higher, and again, engage them more with a better communication structure.
Thank you, Ms. Nestor.
What was the question?
Question was, without a formal newspaper,
Oh, okay.
in town.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to take this tact a little bit differently, because we are a small town, and the isolation that we have endured in the past few years really prompted me to do a newsletter every week and bring together all of the things that if you had a kid too young to be in the school, or if you were an empty nester, or your kids aged out, or you were a senior, everything could be in one place. It's a little bit too much TMI sometimes, I understand, but I do believe that that's just one step. I think another way to bring people together and to keep people informed is to actually give them a reason to come together. And one of the major initiatives that I did in my tenure here was actually create ways of our community coming together through community events, through special initiatives like our partnership with our sister city in Seversk, who, by the way, does do the press releases and all of that stuff. And I would love, as a comms person, to have somebody in our office doing these press releases. It's just very difficult. We're a very lean staff, and that would be something to formalize the communications, to push these things out. But I think we want our residents to know what's going on, and what better way to inform them than through their neighbors. So between the tree, the holiday festival, and the various little programs that we've been able to do in celebrations, we've been able to communicate one-on-one. So I think it's not just through email, it's not just through press releases, but it's also through each other.
Thank you. Mr. Grossinger.
So I'll be very brief again. Credit where credit is due. I think town hall happenings has been an extraordinarily important thing. I think the political parties have also. Amy Jenner has also sent out a newsletter from time to time, keeping people informed of what's going on in the Board of Selectmen. I think Sam's idea of, if I may say it this way, of a communications director, basically, in town hall, or somebody to do press releases and regularly get things out to the public is a good idea. But I would say, to the person who said that we don't have a formal newspaper, Ted, I'm sure they didn't really mean it. So I have 30 seconds left, so I'm gonna try to respond to the last question as well regarding new residents and old residents and trying to find a balance between them. I would say that we have to find synergies between them. On the RTC, again, I've been chairman since May. We haven't just asked the new residents their opinions. We have drawn them in. We have 7 new members. Our slate is very representative of the new members in town. So we have really brought them into the process. In terms of synergies, say, obviously seniors would like to have a freestanding senior center in town. Let's make that happen. There are great synergies with the rest of the POCD. a facility with seniors in it in walking distance of retail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pesco, the next question will go to you first. She finds it. It's a good question here. The Town Hall Annex was meant to be a temporary structure. That was over 20 years ago. The building is very deteriorated. What is your plan to house these employees?
I think ultimately, we need a plan to house our town employees. I mean, that's not only the annex, which is probably the most immediate thing, but also Parks and Recs, and also the overflow from our current downtown building. So I think ultimately ultimately the town plan for our school and town facilities need to be finalized as soon as possible so that we can find proper place for our town employees. I think in the interim, it's very difficult. I mean, the work environment there and the facilities are awful, and we need to move them out as soon as possible. And that's why it's a priority to make sure that we basically decide on exactly what the configuration of our town and school facilities are so that we can really start down the road of getting it done. Other than that, if they get any worse, and we may have to put them in temporary office facilities, which is not ideal, right? But
Okay, thank you. I'm going to let Mr. DeLench go and then back to you guys. Okay, Mr. DeLench.
So I don't have a concrete answer to what do we do with that annex and the people who are working there. I did tour the annex, and it wasn't the prettiest place in the world, but people did seem to get their jobs done in a safe way. I also can't help but look at the question with what is going on with the world around us right now in terms of workspaces and working environments. Office spaces are shrinking everywhere. The hybrid model has forced all companies to really re-examine the footprint that they have as companies. And I can't help but think or wonder or ask if we've done that as well in what is sort of a catastrophe of the annex. I think it's one area I would just like to understand is across all of the town facilities and offices, how can we optimize better that space in the current context of hybrid working? So, without knowing exactly the answer, I think that's just the thought I have. I also think, as a supporter of the POCD and the development of the Village Center, that should also ideally provide a solution as well, ultimately, to have more space for not just, retail and commercial development and the services and the amenities that we're dying for in that area, but also a space for this as well. I would love to think that that's an option. What I don't want to do is throw this problem in with a larger school renovation question that then sort of gerrymanders all of it together like I perceive it has. I think we need to look at each issue in isolation.
Thank you. Ms. Nestor.
So I want to remind everybody that the Facilities Optimization Committee was about looking at the entire municipal campus. And it looked at Parks and Rec, it looked at the annex, and as part of that work that we did with Tecton, we also, as a Board of Selectmen, engaged with Tecton to look at our entire town facilities, and we have a draft at the moment for a town plan, and we're waiting for that to be finalized before presenting it, and that did not include the annex or the Parks and Rec building, because the annex is past its useful life. And while I think it would be great for us to put town employees in somewhere in the village district, we do have to make sure we have the infrastructure in place before that can happen. So my answer to what are we going to do with the annex employees, because the building 2 years ago was past its useful life, there are three options. Number one, we can put them in a new portable. Number two, we can add them to the town hall and see what it would cost to bring them over to the town hall. And number three, incorporate them in, actually four, incorporate them in some sort of part of the municipal campus bonding program. And number five, possibly, was it four? I can't count.
You kind of, yeah.
But Karam's idea about putting them in the village district, but we have a significant amount of money that we have to put into making that
Thank you.
septic work.
Thank you, Mr. Posner.
Yeah, I think to characterize the town employees being in the annex as an emergency, I think is false. I think there's plenty of space there. In fact, they are rattling around by anybody's estimation. Any thoughts of putting them in Hurlbut and requiring us to build a new school, I think would be very misguided. Eventually, of course, every structure has to be renewed. Every use has to find a new facility, and the town needs to do that. I would say that it's very, very low on the priorities list. But what we need to do is get out of the analysis paralysis and start really making some decisions, not just 4 to 5 decisions and 3 to 4 decisions, but really make a decision as a community after very, very careful and deliberative process and with dialogue with our community members, what we're going to do with the schools, what we're going to do to get a senior center built, what we're going to do to get the amenities that people want in town now, and then worry about the annex, hopefully as part of that or later.
Thank you. Okay, this will be our last question. And I'm going to start with Mr. DeLynch. What will you do? There's been some suggestion that the majority party and minority party do not work together. What will you do to ensure there's better collaboration between the majority party that is ruling as well as the minority party so they are heard?
I think we somewhat addressed this a little bit already. First, I think we need to downplay the importance of what party affiliation you have in our sort of day-to-day operations and governance. Again, 39% of our town is unaffiliated. So the model that the charter outlines, where you have a bare majority, to use the language, and not a clear majority in any commission. That might have been great decades ago, but I think right now it doesn't. And while the idea was to obviously have balanced inclusion, which is great, I think there is too soft of a level of participation and engagement from the town to really bring forward a rich, competitive group of people who all want to be, in these various boards and commissions. And I think that's, to me, the biggest issue. And I think that's really the town's responsibility, the townspeople's responsibility. Everyone loves this town, and everyone's free to comment a lot about what's going on social media, because that's all easy. But when it's actually time to, for most people, not the ones in this room definitely, but for most people to actually get involved, that's a little bit of a step that most people don't necessarily take. So I think the collaboration just needs to come by ignoring the party affiliations and dropping even some of those maybe basic requirements around who has a majority or not, and being more inclusive of that, third or half or so of our town that is not even identified as being part of any party. And I think that alone will enable everyone's sort of guards to come down and sort of think beyond party politics and identify with one another on issues that are important to the town. I think we need also the fresh blood in the boards and the commissions as well, so that we don't have the sort of baggage and the history of, I've been disagreeing with you for 10 years, so I'm just going to continue disagreeing with you. I think we need a fresher body of people as well to have that collaboration that's so important to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Pesco.
Yeah,
Hold on.
Hold on.
Hey, hold your horses.
I served on the Board of Ed. I was chair, and it was a privilege because we had 7 members of the Board of Ed who we got along regardless of party affiliation. I think people left their party affiliation at the door, and everyone understood that they were there because of the kids. And we didn't always agree with each other, but we really respected each other. We respected each other's opinion, and we realized that the only way to get things done is to compromise. not everyone on the board always got everything they wanted, but at the end of the day, I think that even groups that said, we didn't really agree, but I think it's fine. I wouldn't have done it this way, but I think it's fine. Sort of respected the final outcome. And I think those are the kinds of boards we need. That's the kind of public service we need, where people are raising their hands. Really, it's not about them. It's about the collective, and they're willing to sit down, and we're all willing to express our opinions, respect others' opinions, but understand that at the end of the day, we all need to come together and make a decision and move the town forward. It's not always pretty, not always getting everything you want, but you move the ball forward, and that's the best you can do. That's really it. I don't know if there's any magic there, except having a bunch of people who basically want to work with each other.
Thank you. Mr. Grossinger.
Thank you. Yeah, like Tony, I had a similar experience on the Planning and Zoning Commission many, many years ago. When I became chairman, we really ignored party affiliation for the most part. We made decisions that were always split decisions, always looking for unanimity, obviously, but when we didn't agree, it rarely was on party lines. When I was elected to the Board of Selectmen for my first term, it was right in the middle of what I thought would be the most divisive period in national politics. Turned out that was premature. And Chris and Brian and I met at Brian's house before we were sworn in, and just to talk about how we wanted everything to go. And I asked to speak first, and I told them, look, I am not going to be a spoiler. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. When you hear from me, it's because I have a very legitimate concern, and not because I want to engage in any sort of political theater or anything like that. And I think over the course of the next 4 years, I demonstrated and modeled what good bipartisan cooperation looks like. Thank you.
As the second selectman on the Board of Selectmen with Stefan Grossinger, I can attest to that. And I will say, serving on the board with him and Chris, and serving on the Board of Ed with Tony, we were able to come together, and when we disagreed respectfully and productively. There was a conversation that Stefan and I once had, and it was on the board, and it said, we all have the same goal in mind. We all want to make this town better. We all believe strongly, and we love this town. We just may have different ways of getting there. Tony might ride a bike. I might use a scooter. You might have a dog. You might walk your dog in there. And Karem might be on a Vespa. But we all want, I think that's good, right? I think. But we all have the same goal and the same passion in mind, and it's about getting things done and doing things for the best and betterment of the town. And I think when you all have that goal in mind, and it's a similar dream and it's a similar goal, it doesn't matter if we disagree or if we have different ways of getting there. So I would say if we all keep the same goal in mind, and it's not about, channeling any sort of grievance, that it's about doing what's best for the town, I think we can all find consensus.
Thank you. It's time for closing statements. I'm going to try to do the Republican-Democrat thing. Since you went, Ms. Nestor, let's hear from Mr. DeLench first. 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So first of all, I forgot to thank you and the League of Women Voters for having us today. When Stefan first asked me to join the race, I was surprised. I was intrigued, and then I kind of really got into it. I wouldn't have seen myself as an intuitive choice to run with him, but and I didn't really have those kinds of aspirations. But since being nominated, I've been humbled at the support that I've gotten, and from the number of people who've just come up to me so proactively, strangers included, to say thank you for running, and almost sort of relieved. I would say, you're welcome, but why, or or am I qualified? You know, what do you think? And they're like, you're exactly what we need. And I've been really humbled again to hear that. Ultimately, I think the next question is always, I didn't know you were Republican, you know, and such a whisper. But ultimately, I think we need to balance the development of the town with, you know, priority on the village center with smart spending and really looking hawkishly at our P&L and our budget. When I was with the Economic Vitality Committee, one of our sort of missions was to sort of look for the rezoning of that area in the village center, and that's since happened, and that's great. But we now need to sort of act a lot more quickly and not just sort of sit passively and wait for a fish to bite. I think we as a board and as a government need to be a catalyst to make sure that we actually actualize the vision. We need to engage with brokers and developers and market, you know, the village district as a place where someone can do business, someone can shop. There are people who wonder about the supply and demand there. I think that, you know, based off of the number one issue that, you know, I always hear from everyone is we don't have enough amenities. I would be hard pressed to think that there wasn't an ample level of demand there. As a father of two young kids too, I think our schools and the curriculum are, the teachers and the security are the biggest priority as well, or second biggest priority. I think that that's something that we also need to stare down with priority and make sure that we're spending the way we want to spend, and we're not looking at a blank checkbook there. Every candidate always talks about how pivotal their election is, and you know, we're always at a crossroads. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but we're at a crossroads. I really think, you know, if I could shake everyone on their shoulders and say, listen, we could be looking at a huge project that's going to have a huge impact on our taxes. And if you don't super pay attention to every detail that's coming out, and if you sleep for a second, you'll miss it, and your taxes are going to be up all of a sudden, you know, 18% or whatever it might be. So I really urge everyone to think beyond party lines, which has been, I think, a big theme today. I'd be honored if I was the first Republican for a Democrat to vote for, and I think that that's really how we should be looking at this election. And I just want to thank everyone again for coming out today.
Thanks so much. Mr. Pesca.
Well, I believe that the mission of town leadership is to keep people safe and to make life better for them. And that's what I'm going to focus on during my tenure on the Board of Selectmen if I'm elected. Now, in my mind, there's really 4 focus areas that encompass that mission. It's infrastructure, human resources, safety, and community. On infrastructure, our town's roads, bridge, town and school facilities, water supplies are a lifeblood of our community. We need to continue to invest in these critical assets to ensure they remain safe, efficient, and sustainable. By improving our infrastructure, we enhance lives and create the ability to attract new businesses and residents. Secondly, our human resources are our greatest assets. We need to support our town employees, ensuring they have the resources and training necessary to deliver exceptional services to the town. Safety is paramount, and I pledge to work diligently to maintain a secure environment. This means supporting our first responders, continuing to modernize our emergency response systems. We also need to focus on pedestrian traffic safety, making our streets and buildings more accessible. Lastly, building a sense of community is at the heart of everything we do. This includes focusing on more gathering places, and we need to continue to make sure we have exceptional services for our youngest learners as well as our lifelong learners through Parks and Recs, our library, social services, and the senior center. Now, why me? I have three reasons: bandwidth, know-how, and dedication. I have the bandwidth as someone who's retired from full-time employment. I have the know-how that comes from building large businesses during my career and managing billion-dollar budgets, as well as 5 years on the Board of Ed and leading the district through COVID crisis, the appointment of school leadership, returning excess funds to the town general reserve in my last 2 years of my tenure as chairs. And I have the dedication as someone who has lived in Weston for 30 years and considers Weston my forever home. I thank you for listening today, and I hope I have your vote.
Okay, Mr. Grossinger.
So I'd like again to thank the League of Women Voters, and you, Laura, for moderating this, and also thank you, audience members, for coming out here. I've been in government for about 19 years now, and it seems like there are the same core group of people show up to most of these meetings. So thank you for your continued interest. I hope what's come across today is, at least from my chair, is my deep respect for Sam and Tony, and for Krem as well, obviously. I think all of us are engaged in trying to make town government as reflect the town values as much as possible today. There are, however, real distinctions, and I think, as Krem says, we are at a pivot point here. I'd like to say first why I'm interested in being on the Board of Selectmen, and then tell you why I hope you would want me on the Board of Selectmen. I have been a volunteer firefighter in town for 25 years. I was also served on the Board of Directors of the Aspetuck Land Trust, and as its Vice President. I served 7 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission and 4 years on the Board of Selectmen. I hope that a vast majority of the people who know me in those, or knew me in those positions, would agree that I was a positive force and a reforming force in each case. The pivot point we find ourselves in now is the schools. Obviously, they do need some attention. The question is, how do we get that attention paid to them in a way that town can afford, and so we wind up with facilities that we can live with, and also a very a tonal issue as well. As a attorney, again, I will say that I have expertise in driving these projects home and expertise in dealing with conflict resolution, and those two things will be critical in the coming years if we're going to make real progress on some of these amenities and some of these projects, and on getting the schools in a shape that we can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nestor.
I want to thank everyone for coming, and especially my husband, so thank you for braving the crowds. I'm just going to say, anybody who's read anything I've written, anybody who's seen me at any events, anybody who's met me at your door, you know that I love Weston. I am passionate about our town. I chose to raise my family here. I chose to run my business from here. And it is this town that I chose to give back to. I know that my husband would have preferred me buy a very fancy car when I had my midlife crisis. Might have been easier. But I chose to use my communication skills, my project management skills, and my relationships to make this town better and safer. And I hope you will let me continue to do that. I have done the work that's involved to bring in close to, actually now more, because we just got another STEEP grant, $35 million. I've come up with ways of reducing our operating costs by having solar panels funded on our DPW, which will fund our entire municipal campus. We'll then take off one of the most changeable items on our budget, which is our electric bill. I have done really hard work to bring our community together, whether it be forming the Severse Sister City project, whether it be the community events or the individual outreach, but I know that I can do better. I've completed a number of different projects that we've gotten funded through the ARPA program, whether it be free Wi-Fi, our charging stations, our town green, or giving the last bit of money for the Office Center. And more importantly, I understand how our town works. I work very, very closely with all of our department heads and have a leadership team meeting every single week. So I am intimately aware of what's going on. And this isn't a sleepy town anymore. This is a town that expects more from their leaders. And it's a full-time job. And I'm there every day making things happen. And I hope you will send me back there. And I hope you'll send Tony back there with me too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank everyone today. I want everyone to go to the website, lwvwestonct.org, where you can find a voter's guide, information about upcoming candidate debates, as well as the updated Know Your Town directory. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of these folks on stage who have stepped up.
I would have said I love you too.
Local elections are the most important. Please turn out
I'm so
on November
not late for
7th.
being here.
Thank you.
I can't even begin